As matriculants await their results, many pupils are experiencing anxiety as their futures hang in the balance. The disrupted matric exam season was also a difficult time for them, with more uncertainty ahead over when universities will be opening. So Peter Kriel joins us now to tell us a little more on how matric pupils or pupils alone could cope during this stressful time. Peter, you were just answering a question about what can pupils do to manage the stress of the unknown.
Well, I think stress this time of the year is quite normal, but more so with the matric class of 2020. So I think one of the most important things they can do until the results are out and they're settled for the rest of the year is to review their plans so that they can ensure that they will be able to continue on their chosen path regardless of any new or unforeseen circumstances like we saw in 2020 that may arise and throw a spanner in the works. So I think that's the key focus. Will I be able to continue? What are my plans that I have? If I've chosen an institution to go and study at, how prepared are they to continue with my education or my dreams in the event of unforeseen circumstances?
I think parents and guardians also play a pivotal role in all of this. And what would your advice be to them in managing stress, especially during this time as well?
Well, I think from a parental side or a friend side even, is support. One would think that adults are more equipped to deal with stress than an 18-year-old, for example. So be there, support, make sure they have a plan, help them find answers if they don't have answers, particularly so if a young person hasn't made plans. If you're still thinking about what you're doing or should be doing, that's problematic. So in those instances, particularly parents should jump in and guide the young person to look for an institution. Spaces are getting limited. They shouldn't wait for the results to come out. They need to act now because it's almost already too late. So I think from a parental perspective, support and make sure that your child or the young person in your life has got a plan.
Peter, in an article published by your team, you speak about matriculants reviewing their plans for the year. How would you suggest they do this, given the uncertainty that the pandemic brings?
Well, I think, if you're in a good space, you've made your plans, you know that what you want to study. But quite often, and this is true with the pandemic and without the pandemic, quite often young people would apply to study a direction or a discipline based on peer pressure, based on what the parents did, and I always profess that it's a good idea to sit back and say, did I make the right decision? Is this the right choice for me? Have I chosen the right career path? Have I applied at the correct institution? So all of those kind of questions are important for any matriculant, but more so this year.
Now, does the uncertainty of this year give the matriculants an increased level of resilience for when they eventually enter university and the workspace?
Well, I certainly think it did. As much as 2020 was a really, really hard year for both matriculants and anybody else for that matter, I do think skills that were developed during this time to cope with life, to just interact with your teachers, for example, are already life skills that will stand you in good stead going forward. But a matriculant that managed to get through the 2020 class and passes and get their results now, they've got skills that other matriculants from previous years didn't necessarily develop. And I do think those life skills will stand them in good stead when they go into an institution of higher education.
Peter, could we look at things like costs and accessibility as well? Do those also add to the frustration and the stress that matriculants are experiencing at the moment?
Of course, cost and accessibility is always an issue, and it's different for different people. The reality is that accessibility in the public universities is sometimes a challenge because they fill up, they're populous, so they fill up, and then especially a young person who didn't apply in time may face the possibility that there's simply no space. The reality is that your traditional public universities are not the only options. There are fully accredited and registered private providers around, which offers equal education. So those are considerations that you must take into account. Affordability is a different aspect, because the young people who can't afford a public university, and there are people who can't afford private universities or private institutions. What is quite often misinterpreted is the sense that public institutions are necessarily cheaper than private. That is not always true. So I would recommend that young people do their homework, ask the right questions, so that they can get an informed answer about what the possibilities are.
Peter, what about the fly-by-night institutions that are being advertised specifically on newspapers and social media and even billboards across, for instance, the Joburg CBD? How do students authenticate an institution? How do they know that it's a legitimate institution that they could apply for further studies?
Of course, fly-by-night or bogus institutions is the bane of our lives, all of us. But the good news is it's quite easy to check. So there are two ways that I say to young people you can check. The one is on the Department of Higher Education and Training's website, there's a register for private providers. So you go into that register, it indicates both known bogus colleges, okay, so it will have a name there and say this institution is not accredited, it's bogus, don't go there, as well as the names of fully accredited and registered institutions. So if you go on the Department of Higher Education and Training's website, you see a name of an institution there and it says this institution is accredited and registered, it's very safe to go there. Don't go to any institution that is not on the register or which is on the register but indicated as bogus. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to look on the SAQA, the South African Qualifications Authority website, to see if the qualification that you're applying for at the specific institution appears on the SAQA website under that institution. And if it's there, once again, you're pretty sure that you're safe.
I think another or important aspect that we also need to look at, Peter, is the registration process at many of these institutions. We've seen in previous years some queues and troubles taking place outside of these institutions when people are just trying to register. Do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic has played an important role in making the online registration process a lot more simpler for students out there who are looking at getting into university?
Well, absolutely, yes. Not only the pandemic. I was at UJ at the time with the Stampede, and that was long before the pandemic. And from that point, institutions use technology to create environments that are safer. Of course, technology has developed. So institutions made changes. Online applications, online registrations are now the norm. And with the pandemic, that was even taken a step further in that people are now more tech-savvy, if I can call it that way. Most institutions, businesses, not only education, had to invest in technology to make the environment more accessible. So absolutely, online applications, online registrations are the norm today, and that will certainly go a long way to assist young people, not only to practice social distancing and not gather in large groups, but convenience and comfort and safety in general.
All right, Peter Kriel, thank you for your time. That was Peter Kriel joining us discussing the management of stress and anxiety as matriculants await their exam results.